Garbage stinking up the place. Landfills are filling at a rapid pace. It seems it's a problem we must face. Come up with an answer soon. Let's give the leaves a whole new turn. I don't feed them to the world. Give them the respect they deserve. Yes, and things to the it's the best advice I've heard. If we can to the world. They turn garbage to black gold. Those things strong and strong and so. We help them, they'll help us so. Let's feed our little friends.
Well, hello, everybody. I am Neil Seldman, Zero Waste USA. I work on the Cornucopia project, and I'm here with some very old friends and some new friends. And I'm very appreciative of being in the spot of moderator. It was exactly 50 years ago, in September, October 1973, when I started my work in waste and recycling. I started a compost site to compost all the food trimmings from the cooperative grocery and food stores in Adams Morgan in Washington, D.C. And 50 years later, I'm still working on compost. I work in Detroit with some amazing compost organizers, Michelle Jackson from Sustainable Community Farms, and Deborah Stewart Anderson from Zero Waste USA. And I also want to give a shout out to Renee Wallace, who's with Food Plus Detroit, who I quote all the time because she pointed out that composting is zero waste's secret weapon. And I think, I know by that she means that it does so much. It creates jobs, good jobs. It supports small businesses throughout the community. In terms of how it relates to nature, it saves water, sequesters carbon, and keeps our soils healthy. And among other things, if you have a backyard composting operation, you will be teaching your children, the next generation, about bugs and things and how they work. And they will never suffer from nature deficit disorder, which is a good thing. And we have a terrific program today. I'm going to introduce all three of our speakers, and then I'll introduce them as they start their presentations. Let me start with Stan Slaughter, an old friend going back to my working in Kansas City in the 90s. Stan is an eco troubadour in the best sense of the word. He now runs Missouri Organics, and he has had quite a career. He is an educator, he's a musician. He started in the early 1990s in Kansas City, working on yard debris, and has expanded his reach to over 27 states and an amazing 400,000 students in his career have been influenced by Stan. And he produces videos, posters, and albums. And I must say, he's the author and singer of that classic Rot and Roll, which we will all enjoy. He works at festivals, and now he's working on Missouri Organics Recycling. We also have Sean Potts with us. Sean is with USDA. He's an analyst for the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Products, and he works for the Natural Resource Conservation Service as part of USDA. Prior to his work with USDA, he worked for Trees for the Future. He's worked internationally and has advanced degrees in food and agriculture and environmental policy. And Sean will be talking about current USDA programs. We have Gary Liss with us. Gary is, of course, a colleague of mine at Zero Waste USA. Gary is the former mayor of Loomis, California. He's was also the solid waste manager for San Jose, California, and he is an intellectual force for both the Sierra Club as well as the National Recycling Coalition. And Gary will be talking to us about federal programs available to communities and cities. And finally, we have Rick Anthony, who's been my mentor in recycling for all these 50 years. And Rick is the vice president of Zero Waste USA in charge of advocacy. And he works diligently for the COOLNow program, the Save the Albatross Coalition, and he is also the chair of Zero Waste International Alliance, which reaches countries throughout the world. Having said that, I will now introduce immediately Stan, and we asked Stan to start us off with one of his songs to get us rolling, if you will. So Stan, please take it away.
Great. Thanks, Neil. This started back in 1992 when there was a yard waste ban in Kansas City, and who are you going to call? There's old dead leaves in your neighborhood. They're blowing around like you knew they would. The dumps are full all over town, but you need some help breaking this stuff down. I'm talking about a hard workers bunch. They take old leaves and turn them into lunch. Eating grass and turn it chocolate brown. You'd be amazed how they warp it down. Composting got you in. Composting. I ain't gonna tell you just what you should do, but I'd call the composters if I were you. They like it hot, they need a place to work. Just feed them leaves, grass and dirt. This makes them up with their favorite food. Build them a pile so they can groove. Composting got you in. Composting. Just remember, they get no thanks for all their work, it's true, but when you need them, no one else will do. The composting got you in. Composting. Just remember, I ain't gonna tell you just what you should do, but I'd call the composters if I were you. Composting. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Stan.
Thanks, Neil. Okay. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Are we looking full screen and all? Thank you, Gary. All right. Well, the title is Alchemy on the Plains, and alchemy is an unusual circumstance. It's the unexpected abundance that flows from a series of positive, beneficial, and unforeseen events and circumstances. And by the way, I wanted to mention, I don't run Missouri Organic. I'm the educator, and the Anderson family are the owners, and we'll get to that, but I'll make that clear. But it's how 2 + 2 = 9 if you let it. You can build a bigger entity by putting a lot of pieces together in a good way. And I submit that's what's kind of happened in Kansas City. And I hope you'll agree with me when you see what's all been going on. So it was built on a whole bunch of factors: humble beginnings and organic growth, favorable winds legislatively, stable leadership, mechanical talent, product innovation, community outreach, educational commitment, grant support. All of those things have come together to make Missouri Organic the flagship for a lot of good programs. I want to start by showing you
We've been doing food waste compost since 2005. Until today, you're looking at 465 million pounds of food waste we've composted. That's enough food waste to fill Arrowhead Stadium. So this nature-wise compost is the material we put back in the community that goes from farm to table to compost, back to farm, back to table again. This is completing the circle. We are one of 10 facilities in the United States that has one of these machines, this Tiger depackager. We are the only facility in the United States that does it this way. So as you can see behind me, the plastic is falling on the floor. It goes to waste to energy. The food waste gets pumped into tanks that you've seen, and then into the mixer. The mixer creates the compost mix. The compost takes about 6 to 8 weeks. And then all the stuff you see behind me also is going to waste to energy. So it goes to a cement plant where it gets burned for energy.
From the very beginning of this site, Missouri Organic has been a partner with us. So we've gotten, hundreds of yards of compost. We've gotten wood chips. Basically any resource that we've asked for, they've always been here to deliver and help us get this project going.
Yeah, that took maybe 20 minutes with the blower, so pretty cool.
In 2011, the Kansas City Chiefs started collecting organic materials from Arrowhead Stadium. We've partnered for over 9 years with Missouri Organic and collected over 1,261 tons of organics. We challenge our fans not only to help us compost at Arrowhead Stadium, but also in their daily lives.
I'm the educational arm for Missouri Organic Recycling. About a year ago, we built a poster, a diagram called Food Too Good to Waste. It's kind of the ideal food recovery system for Kansas City. We're using the poster, the song, and the website to teach kids all over the metro and all over the country. Adults too. It's win, 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 win. When you do things right, the benefits kind of cascade. Yo, I got a story about a problem we are facing. We're creating and maintaining a big mess across the nation. It's a problem with the food. Almost half is wasted, left till it's outdated. Goodness never tasted it. Food too good to waste. It starts with preparation, the peeling and the chopping, work that must be done. Not a lot of fun, but the battle to be won is to keep it out of the dump. Food too good to waste. Food too good to waste. So the founding story is that Dave Anderson was a chimney sweep, and he was collecting firewood to sell to his chimney customers so that their chimneys would get dirty and he could go clean them. And when the yard waste ban came into effect, he said, well, I'll just take some of this, but most of it wasn't good firewood, it was brush. And so he became a composter. And about that same time, the city needed someone to take care of the brush and yard waste in the city. So that's how we basically got into the business. And now Dave's sons, Kevin and Jason, run the company. 100 employees, 7 locations. And we started in 2005, long before we had the depackager. So we basically took what we collected, contamination, plastic and cardboard, along with it, and put it in this, what we called the burrito, rolled it up and composted it. And it wasn't ideal, but we did screen it out and had a good product. But we knew that there was a better way. And by the way, food waste is a fabulous source of nitrogen and moisture. And most of the small town community compost facilities that don't have food waste can't really even make a decent product. It's all sticks and wood. It's hard to compost, takes a long time. So food waste is a natural ingredient, natural companion to the yard waste that we need. We had a manual depackager. It was a guy, and it was slow and cumbersome, but now the Tiger can do 15 tons an hour. This is the Missouri Organic family team from 2009. Dave is on the right. Jason's up on the hill. He's the operations manager, and Kevin is the vice president of marketing and sales. And since 2005, we've collected 300 commercial accounts regionally, from Lawrence to Warrensburg and St. Joseph. We collect bad dog food, industrial liquids, all kinds of materials, 300 accounts. This is a description of the Missouri yard waste ban that was passed in 1992. Politically, I don't think it could have been passed almost any other time since then, but it's a visionary law and we took advantage of it. And starting the year after we opened, we got a public-private partnership with the city of Kansas City. These agreements are golden if you can work one of these out with your metropolitan area. It established 3 different drop-off locations within Kansas City, and the goal was no resident more than 10 miles from a drop-off. They're free on Saturdays to drop off waste, proof of residency required. It gives Missouri Organic a bankable flow of materials, and it establishes us as the Metro's organic utility. Easy storm debris cleanup. Kansas side, unfortunately, doesn't have a yard waste ban, we don't have only but one location in Kansas. And we had a lot of problems with a big storm recently and residents complaining over there that they couldn't get rid of their brush in a timely way. Builds familiarity with our locations because those are also retail locations. And we have 2 other cities that have joined in with public-private partnerships. So we had a recent area storm. Kansas City's 40 miles square with a very diverse and rich timber canopy. And so when we have big storms, we really get a lot of brush. This was a 15,000 ton storm. And our drop-off sites got slammed, but we have 4 big 1,000 horsepower tub grinders and we were able to handle it. So our facilities are, we have a central Kansas City, Missouri mulch and yard waste processing center that's near the Royal Stadium complex out just east of downtown. We have 3 drop-offs, north, central, and south. We have 1 satellite location in Kansas. We have 1 bagging plant in the industrial district in Kansas City. And then also about 20 miles out, we have a rural composting facility. So we grew this business organically. We didn't have a lot of capital inputs. It was basically based on profits and occasional inputs from grants. So this cautious management strategy gave us stability to last for 30 years. And since about 2010, we've been growing really rapidly. So our first grant bought our first loader in 1993, and we are funded by the Regional Solid Waste Management District. Missouri has 20 districts. Our tipping fee goes to the 20 districts and goes back out to all of those and then available for grants. So our regional solid waste district and then 1 department of the the Missouri Department of Natural Resources have been our 2 main funding agencies. They funded the building that the depackager goes in. They did purchase of our biochar kilns that are recently going on. And recently we've been funded by the state of Kansas to take our food to good to waste curriculum into schools. So stable leadership and integrity, private family ownership. Our personal reputation is on the line. Sometimes the buck gets passed upline. Well, the buck stops right here with the Anderson family, and that really shows. People know they can trust us. It helps build brand recognition, and we actually don't advertise in print media or on TV. We don't use NPR. We do social media and Google and 1 little newsletter. One of the kind of strange pieces of this is that the Anderson family are dirt track racers and really good at it, which means they're great mechanics, so that all our maintenance and repair is internal. And we serve as our own general contractor when we build a major project. We hire subs, but we're the general. That saves downtime and dollars. So our process and product innovations, we introduced a premium biochar compost called Green Frontier Compost in 2017. We mix the rooftop garden mix called Roof Light for rooftop gardens. Special mixes for architects, Department of Transportation, all kinds of specialty materials. We purchased a bagging plant in 2018. We installed the Tiger in 2019. We also have a system in that video. You went by pretty fast, but there were 3 9,000-gallon tanks behind the depackager, and we literally store up to 27,000 gallons of food waste. And storing food waste is a very unusual thing to try to do, and it's normally a methane bomb. You burp that tank to keep the settling down and to keep the oxygenation up, and we can literally store food waste for quite a long time. And then that red mixer is actually a grain feed mixer, but it takes about 40 cubic yards of leaves, 1,100 gallons of food waste, takes it to about 65% moisture, and then spits it out into the pile. It gets, because of that intimate liquid nitrogen mixing with the ground up leaves, pile gets to 160 degrees in 18 hours. Nobody we're aware of mixes it and uses it that way. And we're adding biochar kilns this year. So the Tiger is from Italy. It's used over there to process food waste in advance of a digester, 15 tons an hour. We add 60 gallons a minute to create the slurry. We're collecting 50 tons a day of food waste. Many may not be familiar with the idea of waste brokers, whose job it is to lower the environmental impact of the material that a company gets rid of. And zero waste to landfill is the goal, is the standard. If there's no landfill contribution, it's good. We actually have at times a bidding war to get into our capacity, and we're almost always up to full capacity because if people really want to get in. The storage tanks hold 27,000 gallons of food waste, not in this picture. So dealing with the community, we donate compost and mulch, about $60,000 worth a year. Lots of farmers markets and events we visit. We sponsored a major all organic farmers market in Kansas City for several years. We have major boothing outreach, lots of committee meetings, educational talks and presentations in schools. We build goodwill. You've got to be a good corporate citizen. So this is donating mulch to that garden that was featured in the video. This is a booth at the City Hall. If you've got a booth, take your worms. People will come by and talk to you if you've got worms in a box. I started the Climate Friendly Yard Makeover. It's a outreach to the community. We're converting 3 properties with native plants, removing invasives, planting food forests and gardens. We started on Earth Day of 22. It taps into the native plant craze. I don't know about your town, but this town is crazy for native plants in the yard. Big engagement on social media, and it helps us sell mulch and compost. This is kind of the reporter from the field. Hi everybody, Stan Slaughter here from downtown Amsterdam in the Netherlands, finishing up our river cruise. I'm here with Lou, and she's one of the residents of the apartments up here on top of the building. And you've recently planted a native plant.
Well, I didn't, but the council did. The city council, they removed 2,500 square meters of stones to replace it with this green.
Right.
And it goes all the way up to the end. And this part actually was seeded, so just with seeds.
Right.
Wasn't planted, so and it came up beautiful because we had a terrible summer. So rain.
How old is this?
Since October last year.
Wow.
And before that, it was just like the concrete stones.
So you really got it, folks. Free international advice on getting your native plant garden started. So let's get with it, and talk to me when I'm back in Kansas City, okay? That's the kind of thing. We had one post get 4,000 hits in 3 days. And I've had multiple 30-something young women come up and say, "Are you Stan? Are you that guy on YouTube?" And the answer is yes, but I've never been a celebrity at that level. All my fans are under 10. But the scope of our social media, we have literally a consultant, Patty, that works on this. We send her the material and she posts it and rotates it, keeps it moving. It's very critical to not to have somebody have your social as a part-time job. It's important to do that well. Facebook, 3,400 followers. Instagram, 1,700 followers. YouTube, Twitter. We use Google Business Listings, and we get quite a bit out of that. We usually post about 3 times a week. You got to keep the feed going. People get attached to your content. And this is a 90-day count. We had 13,447. That's about 150 Facebook people a day. So I'm the Director of Outreach and Education. I joined in June of 17. I have a long background in composting education. I was the statewide waste reduction educator for Kansas for 17 years. So I've driven around the world 6 times in Kansas. Just saying. Done musical assembly programs, like Neil said, in 4,100 schools in 27 states. And I had grants from all these agencies in Missouri and Kansas and Kansas City area agencies in my background. So that was helpful. So the Eco Troubadour and the Compost Roadshow is still on the road. Thank goodness I don't have to drive so far anymore. I took over boothing and donating compost to nonprofits. I added the assembly programs, the posters, the games, a grant-funded curriculum called Food Too Good to Waste, and I brought on my partner Katie White to help with her grant organization, climate-friendly yard makeover, and we recently had 2 citywide, metro-wide compost festivals where we build 50 or 60-yard compost pile, and we bring in 2,500 gallons of yeasty beer dregs and mix it all together for people, and they end up with a great pile of compost to use. So speeches and PowerPoints, school assemblies, and our curriculum has been funded for 3 years by Kansas, over 100 schools and 10,000 students. Here I am speaking at the Mother Earth News workshop in Lawrence. Recently got invited to speak at the International Master Gardeners Convention in Kansas City, in Overland Park, Kansas. So we brought this backyard composting poster. Been in publication since '94. The worm bin poster teaches people the basics of managing a worm bin. And then the Food Too Good to Waste poster. A lot of people are visual learners. You got to accommodate different learning styles. And this is one that's kind of like Where's Waldo? And they get a chance to see the cycle of the food waste going in, the compost coming out, and all the different ways we can use it. So we give these posters out at all our boothing events, and you can buy one too. Also, I brought the Compost Gen card game, and it's kind of an instant workshop. People play the game. They get 3 browns, 2 greens, 1 heat, 1 moisture, 1 beneficials card, lay down their hand and say, compost.
I love it.
They win. So it's been very, very popular, and we've had good luck with it. And for the grants, we put together the school music package, which, if you're going into a school, you can't just play music. You got to tell them that it's got educational content. So we put in there the science objectives that are covered in each song, the lyrics, the karaoke tracks for the kids to sing along, musical arrangements for the piano teacher to be able to play that, MP3s of 8 songs by download, and suggestions for activities. And that is based on my best-selling album called Rotten Rome. So the future. We've got 2 biochar kilns that will actually fire up into full operation next week. Kansas City, Missouri drop-off sites. One of the grants that you'll hear about later in the program is paying for a series of food waste drop-off sites in Kansas City. We have a card swipe drop-off kiosk program that will land later this year, and a drop-off at community gardens. And we are changing our process of composting at Missouri Organic. I'll talk more about that in a minute. So we started biochar in 2017. It sells for a premium. Most growers won't use, many growers won't use anything else. Has a high fungal content, retains moisture, provides habitat for microbes and roots. We used to previously purchase biochar, now we're making our own. This is a unusual group that comes together, the manufacturer, the certifier of the carbon credits, and Missouri Organic is a homegrown conglomerate, and Missouri Organic is operating the units. This is a drone shot. It's grant funded. It creates long-term carbon credits from its use, creates biochar to enhance our main products. Now, our plastic contamination becomes the fuel, and it heats 2 large buildings, but it's got a cogen unit on it, cogeneration electricity. It's got the power to take 20 of our large hauling trucks and turn them into all electric trucks. And so we figure out this has got enough benefits that we needed to go with it. Community drop-off composting. This is one on the Kansas side, not ours. We'll be copying something like this for 3 large drop-off centers at our recycling centers and maybe some others. Unfortunately, in our part of the world, you've got to have a locked gate on open containers because they'll fill up with trash. So this is a company called Better Earth Logistics in Peoria, Illinois. They sell a kiosk. It's got a 95-gallon trash can in the inside. It uses a plastic tap card. It gives you access to them. We'll have an opt-in video and pledge that the people will have to sign and then get their card. We'll use this or similar technology, and we're targeting 50 to 60 of these at grocery stores. Think about the concept of being able to bring your food waste to the grocery store and pick up your food and go back. We're looking at community garden food waste composting so that people can bring their food waste to the community garden and drop it off and pick up their groceries, their fresh garden produce. It's based on a pallet. It's totally enclosed in wire. It's vermin proof, and it's a modular design. We built one of these that's 11 pallet bins large, so it's real, can easily be expanded. We're going to include training for the garden staff so that they'll be able to understand how to manage this as it goes forward. And this is part of the funded program, but we're not sure when this will roll out. Okay, as we've been composting throughout the year, we realized that our fresh compost doesn't grow crops very well because it's too bacterial, and that compost becomes more fungal as it cures. If we give it 6 months, fungi come back into it. They either fall in as spores or they are there initially. And habitats with the most fungi are the most productive in the world. That's the way we got them from nature, and then we've degraded most of them. So we're measuring the fungal to bacterial count with a very simple kit called a microbiometer. You can look it up. Some common fungal to bacterial ratios. So fresh compost has 1 fungus to 10 bacteria. A good vegetable garden would be 1 to 1. Cured compost is 1.5 to 1. A virgin prairie is 7 fungal to 1 bacteria, and a rainforest can be as much as 10,000 fungi to 1 bacteria. So it can vary widely, and there's ways we can improve it. So we're starting a shift, and this is going to be a mind-bending piece. It's going to take a little time, and you may not get it today, but you get it. We're going to shift away from composting to fungal fermentation of the same biomass, the same leaves, food waste, etc. But we're going to ferment it. And here's why. Composting emits 65% of the material as CO2, and in the process, there's some methane. Fungal fermentation actually increases the volume by 10% with no emissions. So what happens? We get 3 times more product for the same amount of input material. A higher fungal content mimics climax ecosystems. It's a much more productive product than compost. There's no turning. It's less expensive to make, requires no special equipment except a tarp. We tarp it, keep it wet, and let the fungi go throughout the material. It sells for $90 to $220 a cubic yard. And the problem with compost is that it feeds the soil and it gets eaten up, and 2 or 3 years later, you've got to replace it. This fungal inoculant creates a long-term change in the soil's ecology, and if you know about compost in a broad acre crop thing, you need 100 to 200 yards of compost a year. Logistically, almost impossible. This requires 2 yards of compost per acre. So on the left is a unirrigated potato made with humus soil. The product we're talking about is something called humus soil, and it actually makes water. We'll talk about it. So in the deep ocean vents underneath the Atlantic Ocean, there's hot volcanoes. There's critters that live there. They're called archaea, ancient first type of life on Earth. They live in the hot springs of Yellowstone. They came on land with the first fungi, and a combination of fungi, bacteria, and archaea live in prairies, live in forests, and metabolize ultraviolet and infrared under the ground 24/7. It's called bacterial photosynthesis. And that just goes, no, I can't take that. It's too strange. But the point is, it's actually there. And bacteria is a groundbreaking discovery. What happens is we tarp this material in the shape of an M, we put in biomass, and we get the carbohydrates that are in there. This material cracks the carbon and hydrogen, and it puts them out as humic acids, the forerunners of humus. It takes the hydrogen and oxygen and turns them into water and creates water where there was no water. Humus soil. And so it's powered by ultraviolet infrared 24/7, 365. So I had a recent experience with this. We had a tote of it. We took out into Kansas. We thought we'd use it, brought it back. And I just tested this material. It had been in a hot barn in Kansas for 18 months. This humus soil was 70 degrees inside and moist, literally cold to the touch. And you can't see it below the 70 degrees. The sensor says wet. So this is the founder. It's called VRM Biologic. Products are used in 36 countries. There's 12 million acres under cultivation in Kansas. In China. There's a large Middle Eastern country who recently came on board and invested $77 million in 17 production facilities. Their goal is to become food self-sufficient and to offset all their carbon emissions. The initials are SA. Humus soil is made by fermenting biomass. It sells for $90 to $220. They also have a liquid product which is made by fermenting food waste slurry. It sells for $5 a liter. This is where Missouri Organic comes in, because we make food waste slurry every day. And we can literally pump that into a tote, inoculate it, screw the lid on, come back in a month, and we have a very powerful inoculant, or liquid inoculant, that farmers can spray on. And 2 gallons will cover an acre. So don't feel bad if you don't understand this. It took us 3 years to decide this was something that we wanted to do. So Missouri Organic is a leader in the field of organic waste recycling. We will find and implement the best practices and technology to continually improve what we do. Our connection with our community is a key piece in our ongoing success. So if you guys could screenshot this QR code, you can have all my notes on a Google Drive. And I don't know, our questions will probably come later, right, Neil? Okay, so put your questions in the chat. I know it went by really fast, and I'll be glad to personally answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Stan. That was terrific, and I'm sure a lot of questions are going to be coming. I want to do some housekeeping. I forgot to introduce Chris Sparnick, who is our technical director. He's the program manager for the COOLNow program, and he's been our technical person at Zero Waste USA since the mid-90s when we got started. So Chris is with us. At this point, I want to introduce Sean Potts. Sean is from USDA, and he will be presenting on exactly what he's doing to get money out the door to get more and more composting happening across the United States. So, Sean, if you will.
Trying to find my screen there. Okay, thank you, Neil, and thanks everybody. Thank you, Stan. That was a wonderful presentation. So my name is Sean Potts. I'm with the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production, and I'm here to talk about our composting and food waste reduction cooperative agreement program. So I know we have a lot of international folks in the audience. It is going to be pretty Americentric, you know, but I think that there is something in here for everybody. So I hope you guys get something. So first and foremost, about our office, we are the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production. We are a brand new office. We might even be USDA's newest office. We're housed under NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service. We were created by the 2018 Farm Bill to promote urban, indoor, and other emerging agricultural practices. So that includes community gardens, urban farms, really kind of focusing on local food systems in general, making them a little more resilient to climate change and a little more better serving to people in their communities. So some of the innovative techniques that we foster are rooftop gardens, outdoor and indoor vertical production. That includes greenhouses. It also includes LED, you know, indoor farms, as well as hydroponic, aeroponic, and aquaponic, you know, technologies, and including things that are a bit more, you know, back to traditional farming systems. USDA, you know, has long kind of been criticized for, you know, kind of focusing on industrial ag output. And what we're, you know, hoping to do is kind of dip our toes into this scene and kind of recapture some traditional techniques that includes agroforestry, agroecology, indigenous farming systems, and things like that. It's a big space where a lot is already happening. And we're kind of hoping to help bring together a lot of, you know, disparate pieces to make it more efficient. So what we do as an office, we have two flagship grant program or award programs, I should say, because one is a grant, the other is a cooperative agreement. That is our Urban Ag and Innovative Production Grant. We have our Composting and Food Waste Reduction Cooperative Agreements. So I'll talk about both of those today, more focused on CFWR, it's the acronym. We offer inter and intra-agency support with other federal agencies. So, you know, again, USDA is kind of bringing, you know, a lot to the urban agriculture scene and the local and regional food system scene, especially fostered, you know, with the COVID-19 pandemic and kind of the supply chain disruptions, really alerted us to, you know, a lot that was going on out there in order to help alleviate some of those stresses in our food systems. So kind of working with other agencies that are also dipping their toes into that area, as well as our newly established urban service centers and urban and suburban county committees. So those are really kind of local service centers that are stood up by FSA and NRCS, where urban producers finally have a place where they can go as a one-stop center to help get kind of the resources they need. Those have launched in 19 cities across the United States. There's definitely one near you. They're kind of spread out across the continental United States, and more are coming. So we're hoping that the program's a big success, as well as our urban and suburban county committees that are working, you know, with producers, economists, you know, people that are on these committees to help make decisions to better, you know, understand the urban agriculture needs of those areas. We also have a federal advisory committee made up of producers, representatives in higher education, nonprofits, business, economic development, and supply chain experts that is meant to, you know, work at the federal level to take some recommendations to the secretary to see how we can, you know, foster more development in food system areas, as well as urban agriculture and innovative production. And lastly, we have the People's Garden Initiative. Some people might have heard about this. It was started under The Obama administration, it kind of took a back seat for a little bit, and then it has come back with the Biden administration under Secretary Vilsack's 2 terms. And really, it is a way to kind of knit together different community gardens that are all across the United States, and provide them with a network in terms of sharing resources. There are grant opportunities available at the state level as well. And we're really kind of looking forward to, having, different webinars, initiatives that kind of bring these community gardens together. And you can find out more about that on our website. So we'll talk a little bit about our urban agriculture and innovative production grants. There's a bit of a crossover with this audience, I'm assuming, but then I'll go into more detail about CFWR in a moment. Primary goal of UAIP, its acronym, is to provide competitive pilot projects to support development of urban agriculture and innovative production activities. They can go to schools, special district governments, local governments, tribal governments, municipalities in general, as well as nonprofit organizations, not independent producers, but nonprofits, community gardens, things like that can sign up. Projects can be in all community types. The beautiful thing about our office, even though we have urban in our name, we do not define what that word is. We have many projects in rural and suburban areas. And proposals must address one of the following: a focus on urban and suburban areas where fresh food is limited. So think of food deserts in areas where fresh food might not be as abundant. Assessments of historically underserved communities and individuals in order to help, bring them into more of a healthy food system. Planning activities and community partnerships. So in order to kind of link different parts of the food system together in that community, as well as increasing food production. That's obviously, it's USDA. That's our number one thing. And promoting agricultural businesses and implementation of best practices. So the reason we're here today with composting and everything is the Compost and Food Waste Reduction Cooperative Agreement Program. That is the agreement program that I lead for our office. So Composting and Food Waste Reduction Agreements, or CFWR, provides funding to municipalities, school districts, independent schools, counties, local governments, tribal governments, so municipal level, county level. And it does not currently provide funding to nonprofits, but there still is something, with nonprofit organizations we can get to in a second. And it really helps create that composting infrastructure for municipalities, or at least work to connect, kind of develop maybe 10% of the way some composting infrastructure, so that organizations like Missouri Organics, Stan's Outfit, can kind of link with those municipalities in order to generate more organic waste recycling. So we have, in addition to compost, we also follow the EPA's food waste reduction hierarchy. If you haven't seen it, it looks like an upside down pyramid, where at the top you have getting that food to hungry people. That is, by and large, the number one way we can help reduce food waste and make sure that it goes to, beneficial. We have source reduction, getting edible food to hungry mouths, using it as animal feed, finding industrial uses for it. And then one of the last bit is composting. Obviously compost is great. We want it to go back to the earth. But if there is a way to kind of save it along those lines, we try to focus on that. And at the very bottom of the pyramid, you have your landfill, which we try to avoid at all costs. So proposals must address one of the following. It has to generate well, it doesn't have to. It may generate compost, improve soil quality, increase rainwater absorption. So we do have some projects that are kind of, removing impermeable surfaces. Reduce municipal food waste. That's our kind of our catch-all category. If it gets food out of a landfill, if it helps reduce food waste in general, we want to see it. Diverting food waste from landfills. Increasing access to compost for agricultural producers. So really like linking agricultural producers with a very valuable input. Reducing reliance on and limiting the use of chemical fertilizer. The word chemical should certainly be in there. Organic fertilizer is very powerful, and it helps build soil over time. So we really want to see its use encouraged and encourage waste management and permaculture business development. So really, as Stan was saying, there is a lot of economic benefits that can be had. So speaking of which, our priorities that we give to pilot projects are projects that anticipate or demonstrate economic benefits for a targeted community. Again, there's a lot of money to be had, and we want to make sure that it is, and as well as generating a useful input and helping these communities, develop the soil that is usually so lacking in an urban context. We also want to make sure that they're capturing some funding with that too. Projects that incorporate plans to make compost easily accessible to agricultural producers, community gardens, school gardens, and integrate food waste reduction strategy with other innovative food recovery efforts. So that could be farms gleaning food to give to donation. That could be creating kind of the network for restaurants to link up with food banks. You name it. There's a lot of actors in the food system, and they don't always talk to each other. And if we do kind of build up that communication, there's a lot that can be done and a lot that can be saved. And the projects that we look for include a robust plan that describes collaboration with multiple partners. So we also have executive priorities at the administration level. So we're focusing on environmental justice, racial equity, climate resiliency, and especially in disadvantaged communities, as well as climate smart agricultural practices. So a little bit about what is required. There is a 25% match that is required to apply, and that match can be met in kind. So whether you're talking about your organization's personnel, volunteer labor, things like that, we definitely count it. And that's how a lot of our projects meet that funding requirement. For FY23, our floor and ceiling was $55,000 to $400,000. And you can see the eligible entities here below. There are a lot, and you may be like, oh, well, I'm not a government, I'm not, maybe this isn't for me. We have so many of our projects start with nonprofit organizations, associations of producers that want to see a difference in their community. They go to their city, township government, they go to their county government, they even go to their soil and water conservation district and say, look, we have a plan. Will you partner with us and be the primary applicant on this agreement? And we can fund the project that way. So even if you don't see your organization as an eligible entity here, partner. That is definitely viable. That goes along with our Native American tribal governments, as well as Native American tribal organizations and state designated Indian tribes. So there's really, we're trying to catch a wide swath of the public in this, even if it's not necessarily a government that's leading it. This also includes quasi-public entities, like I said, planning, regional development councils, things like that. So here we have a little bit of a fact sheet of our program so far. It was started in 2020. A little bit of delays and everything in terms of the pandemic, but we've really got it up and running, and we're really happy to see where it's going. Now you can see, just the wide swath of projects that we have according to these maps. Trying to get one in every state. I think we're about, 6 or 7 states away from that. So if you don't see a blue dot in your state, or states that you have friends and partners in, let them know about us. We'd like to fund them. And you can see, speaking of the rural areas, look at Alaska, we've got projects in Yakutat, there's obviously Juneau and Anchorage, Fairbanks as well. So it really doesn't have to be an urban environment, as long as you are focused on, creating, kind of closing that loop, getting food waste to be saved or put back into the ground. We would like to see your proposal. So we've awarded up over 12.4 million to 81 projects. You can see kind of our fiscal year funding there. Got a huge boost with the ARPA funding that came in with the Biden administration FY22. We're able to kind of grow this program. And the great thing about the program, also our Achilles heel, is that it is heavily oversubscribed. We really wish that we could fund more programs, but it is very, very great to see the reception that this has gotten and the amount of local, governments that may have a very, very cool sustainability plan that they're looking to implement, but may not necessarily have the funding to get that started. We want to kind of get them over the line and see some sort of food waste plan implemented. We all know how important it is. So about 23% of our projects directly incorporate food recovery efforts. It is heavy on the composting side, but about a quarter is really, trying to link people with food. Food that is otherwise going to be going wasted. So we're really happy to see that. And again, yes, applications in our FY23 year increased by 70% compared to previous years. So it is a very popular program. We're happy for its popularity and wish we could fund more. Our demographics, 49% of our agreements are within localities that have less than 100,000 people, and 35% are from less than 50,000 and often less than 10,000. So there are a lot of rural entities that are or entities with smaller budgets, even if they are kind of in urban and suburban areas, that are taking advantage of this program. So a few examples that I have. Philadelphia, kind of incorporated on both ends, composting and food waste reduction. So they had a food waste business challenge that was administered by the city's Office of Sustainability, trying to, get restaurants and food system businesses to think about saving more. And Philadelphia Parks and Recreation created a community compost network. So, a bit about, again, what Stan was saying, we try to fund a wide range of composting programs, whether it's curbside collection, food scrap drop-off points, or even on-site composting and community gardens and things like that. We are very much recognizing that there is no one strategy and that all things have to be tailored to like the local area, and we really like to see that. So yeah, little statistics about what they did. Boulder County, Colorado, as part of their Restore Colorado program, they had a pretty unique business model. So they basically got participating restaurants and food bases to collect a few cents on each meal. I believe it was like a quarter per meal, and that really came out to be a decent amount of money for local producers, which they provided small micro grants for. That helped, that it went to initiating composting systems and food waste management systems, as well as source reduction and things like that, and just regenerative agricultural practices in general. So another few yards, there was plenty of compost generated from the program. So many food businesses participated, and now it's a fully, it has a life of its own now. Our funds went to kind of sparking this, and they've really taken off with it. So it's really good to see. Then Madison, Wisconsin, they had a partnered with just a single farm, to really kind of take a lot of food waste, generate compost, and bring it to that farm. Which is, it's kind of an educational demonstration farm. They also created an education campaign and a restaurant sustainability network. So just, lots of things that can be done. A couple that I did want to highlight for this audience specifically, we had one in Henderson County, North Carolina. Theirs was really cool. They basically saw that their public-private partnership was ending. The private partner that's the local hauler was going out of business and wasn't able to take the food waste anymore, and they basically said, well, why don't we just make this public? Let's offer this. And they're in a really rural area. We helped kind of bring power to a mixer on sites and a digester, as well as beneath the floor aeration systems. And they partnered with 6 schools. So again, even if you can't make a general approach in terms of composting, collecting a bunch of stuff, you can get these real hot spots that produce a lot of food waste and collect from them. We also have Kansas City. I would like to highlight that. We're actually working to help Kansas City, Missouri implement a curbside collection program for organics, and they are going to be taking it directly to Missouri Organics with stands. So there's a lot of partners in this space. And finally, a few resources for you guys. I'm pretty sure that we'll send out the slides after this, but we have a link to our FY23 notice of funding of opportunity. We also made a CFWR webinar that kind of shows you how to walk through it. We also have our website, usda.gov/urban. You can click on the cooperative agreements links, and that's gonna give you examples of our project and tell you all you need to know. We are currently expecting the FY23 technical review is currently ongoing. The National Institute of Food and Agriculture is leading that. We expect to release the FY24 opportunity sometime in the winter, probably around February. So stay tuned. You can also sign up for updates on our website. And lastly, some tips. If you're interested in applying, we always look for partnerships. If you want to make a competitive application, the more partners, the better. The more people that are available to help you create a sustainable food system and close that resource loop, the better, we think more viable the partnership is going to be. Second is long-term viability. Make your project sustainable. Have a sustainability plan. We see a lot of applications that simply don't address how this is going to be ongoing. These are pilot programs. It is seed funding to create something that is sustainable in and of itself. So definitely have a plan there. And finally, as I said earlier, tailor it to the local context. There are a lot of different strategies to put together and a lot of different challenges that are really unique and hyper local. In Alaska, they've got to worry about polar bears, no joke, in terms of rural areas and a bunch of rotting food waste where there's not a lot available and a lot of great smells for animals. You have to think about things like that. So those would be my tips, and I'm sure we'll be able to answer questions at the end. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sean. That was a great compliment to Stan's presentation. And let's move directly to Gary Liss. Gary, please go ahead.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you to all the presenters. Really interesting programs, and I wanted to highlight that there's a lot of federal programs. USDA is the one that was selected to highlight for this audience because there's a particular emphasis on composting, but EPA, Department of Energy, other federal agencies have a lot of funding, a lot of which is coming through the bipartisan infrastructure law, the BIL, and the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, that were adopted last year. I'll be highlighting mostly EPA programs for this audience that could also be used for reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost initiatives, including food recovery programs like were highlighted in the USDA program. There's literally billions of dollars available in funding. There's a once-in-a-generation level of support from the federal government for these types of activities. Most of them are ongoing for a couple of years. Most of the notice of funding availability and requests for applications for 2023 are done, so we don't have citations of the immediate prospects for you to apply for. But the good news is you should be getting your work done now. Once the notice of funding availability comes out and the request for applications come out, it's a very tight timeline. And typically, one of the most important things for the federal government under this administration are the partnerships that Sean just talked about, making sure that the team is together, being clear on your goals and expectations, and then finding the right funding source for those particular goals. In previous webinars, we offered through the Recycling's Infrastructure 2 campaign, of Zero Waste USA, Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and the National Recycling Coalition. We had grantsmanship leaders who highlighted that 90% of the work is done before the notice of funding availability comes out. So now is the time to be getting organized, figure out what your project is, get as many collaborative partners as possible, and then get ready for when the requests for applications or notices of funding availability come out. So I'll be going through just quickly some of the EPA programs, the infrastructure funding, solid waste infrastructure for recycling, known as SWIFR, was just selected this week on the notice of those projects that were selected. There's a link in here and a link to a Waste Dive article about that. But this was mostly focused on physical improvements in infrastructure for recycling. But recycling is broadly defined in those regards, and to include reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting are all eligible activities. The next under that funding is the RIO program, Recycling Education and Outreach. We're hoping that notices of who've been selected for those projects will be coming out shortly. There's a link there, which when you get the PowerPoint, you'll be able to click onto. Climate pollution reduction grants is a really big program, $4.6 billion for investment and implementation of investment-ready policies, programs, and projects that will reduce greenhouse gases. Materials management projects are eligible but must be included in climate plans. The funding will be coming through the states or to targeted the largest 67 metropolitan statistical areas. Each of those states that are participating and the MSAs that are participating have been funded to either develop or update their climate action plans. And now is the time that you should be working to make sure that your state or MSA is working on that, and that they're including materials management projects like reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost as part of that, so that you can access that $4.6 billion when those grants start flowing next year. Brownfields grants are one of the best opportunities for particularly in urban areas, but some rural areas as well that are considered brownfields, needing to be implemented to either assess, clean up, or sustainably reuse brownfields. One of the attributes of the brownfields funding is that it has one of the simplest applications available. I understand a one-pager to submit for getting into the programs. That includes a variety of grants for assessment, cleanup, a variety of activities, revolving loan funds, and even job training grants. I was involved with getting a $5 million Department of Labor grant with Santa Monica College many years ago under a similar program. Again, federal agencies are providing lots of funding for all these types of activities. Pollution prevention funding has been one of the real opportunities to avail yourselves of scientific engineering, biologists, chemists, technical people who are able to assist you in figuring out how to reduce, redesign, and reuse things to prevent pollution. There's been a program that's been funded around the country for decades. But from a zero waste perspective, it's a real opportunity to get a lot of technical people involved in solving problems that you don't have a clear way of addressing those. With the new funding available through the acts that were adopted last year, there's a lot more money available. This is on a cycle that's last year was due in April. You'll notice that each of these funding sources have around the beginning of the year to June as when the notices come out. So that's why now's the time to get organized, to be prepared for responding to those RFAs and notice of funding opportunities when they come out. Environmental justice grants are another new initiative of the EPA. For environmental and climate justice, $2.8 billion for financial assistance. Here they talk about thriving communities, really trying to build on community-based organizations and partnerships with the local governments. Community-based organizations, CBOs, are really important partners to consider working with. And in fact, in the EJ area, they have what they call Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers, which are much like the urban service centers that Sean talked about for USDA, where they'll actually provide technical assistance and training on writing grant proposals, navigating the federal systems, managing grant funds, engaging the community, facilitating meetings, translation, and interpretation services for limited English-speaking participants. So there's a whole variety of environmental justice grants available through the EPA. And in addition, all the bipartisan infrastructure law and Inflation Reduction Act funding has a Justice 40 initiative that is seeking 40% of all the projects to be focused on disadvantaged communities. Disadvantaged communities include urban, rural, tribal, underserved communities. So it's a new term of art. The basic message is partner, 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 like Sean said, and particularly with community-based organizations, work together. When you work together, you have a better shot at getting these federal funds. How to find them is go to grants.gov. You need to be registered there in order to pursue the grant funding. So it's a good place to start. And on the top right corner of the screenshot, you can see where it says search, and you enter a keyword, and keyword can be composting, food waste reduction, recycling, reuse, whatever. And it'll come up with the specific results of programs with all the details for you to pursue. That's it. I always end my presentations with, if you're not for zero waste, how much waste are you for? And pass it back to you, Neil. You're mute, Neil.
Sorry. Thank you, Sean, Gary, and Stan, for great presentations. We have at least 15 minutes available for questions. Chris will help me scan the chat. If there are any questions, Chris, please chime in.
I have a list of questions here. Absolutely.
Please go ahead, Chris.
Our first question is from Caitlin Suckwell. We struggle horrendously in Australia with contamination in our curbside recycling FOGO, or food organics, garden organics bin. Where does all the food garden material come from? How much of an issue is contamination? That's for Stan.
Traditionally, really high contamination. In the United States, our hero is the city of Minneapolis, who spent 5 years doing extensive education, workshops, programs in the schools, and then rolled out a limited green bin collection service. They charged everybody for the service and then only gave the bins to the people who opt in and kind of pledged to do their best. They're running at 1% and 2% contamination, unheard of, but it took a lot of work and a lot of commitment to education, which unfortunately seems to be pretty rare. Yeah, in Kansas City, in some places could be considered a rainforest. We get about 40 to 50 inches of rain a year, and parts of Australia I know are really dry and drier lately. So that yard waste may not be a big factor in your waste stream, but for us, it's huge. It was 40% of our waste stream in the fall before the yard waste bans. So we have a very large supply of leaves, and that's an ideal compost material. So, you could declare a victory and quit doing that and then go back to education. So that's really all I have.
Okay. Well, Caitlin also had a remark she wanted to make. She says, also, I feel like you would get a kick out of Formidable Vegetable Band. It's an Australian based. They have lots of fun songs on waste, permaculture, and all of the things to do with sustainability. And she gives a website address that's already in the chat. So if you're interested in that, folks, you can look at that website.
An entire album called Microbiome. It's hilarious. Well, I've run into them about 3 years ago, and I'm following them. So
fantastic. Megan Matthews has a question, and she says, what types of food waste and packaging are commingled in the depackager, and how do you test the output for microplastics? If you do test, have you noticed a change in the level of contamination in finished compost since adding the depackager?
Great questions.
Very good.
What types of materials is, we take food waste from grocery stores. So it's the little packages with the cheese and the crackers, and each one of those items is totally wrapped. We take the big long plastic tubes with the orchids in them from the floral department. We've got all of that stuff come to us, and fortunately the machine can actually do it. But the cool thing about it is it's a slow moving pinching roller that slices the food waste open, the packaging open, so that we're not pounding it and trying to make more microplastics out of it. I'm sure there are microplastics in it, but they're the kind that are on the surface of the plastics and come off with moisture. The question about testing is, no, we didn't test it before we had it, and we still don't test it. But what we do is that depackager is advertised, and we think it's true, 99.6% sort. So of the physical plastics and cardboards, wrapping and packaging that comes in there, almost 99.6 goes out, and we see little tiny pieces of film plastics that come out in the slurry, and they're easy to screen out. So we've got the cleanest compost we've ever had, and it's kind of like the PFAS, the persistent packaging. It's there. It's going to be there. We're not the source of it. We're kind of a no-fault receiver of these products. And actually, as we know, bacterial activity and healthy soil is the best way to mitigate these things. And so we're putting it in an organic system that will hopefully chelate and lock those materials up. But at this point, it's not economical to test 50 tons a day.
Dan, could you tell us how much that machine costs and what its daily capacity is?
Yeah, it's in the area of $1 million. I believe we were able to get one used that was in the States, but that's about the capacity, and it can handle 15 tons an hour. We are our own mechanics, and we have every piece that we can possibly have on stock, so that it does go down from time to time. There are serious contaminations and whole wads of forks and things we can't see on the way in, and so when it does go down, we have to be able to repair it and replace it very quickly.
So you have the technicians on staff to keep the full maintenance and keep it operating. Okay,
absolutely. These guys do it every day, and they know every inch of this thing.
Great, thank you, Stan.
All right, we have another question from Caitlin Sockwell. This is about the garden in Amsterdam. Where in Amsterdam is this? I just moved to the Netherlands. I would love to visit, check this garden out in person.
Well, I replied to Caitlin individually earlier, so while Sean was talking, I actually snuck away a little bit and answered some questions on the private chat. If you're in Amsterdam, it's by the Movenpick Hotel, which is right next to the main train station, and out in front of that to the right-hand side as you look at the hotel. But it's a long stretch. It's probably a quarter mile by 100 feet. It's a big patch they put in.
Tom Wright's question is, he notices that Bayer was a sponsor of the poster. Does MOR test for glyphosate residue? If so, what quantity residue shows up in the finished product or fungal amendment?
Yes, they are. No, we don't. Almost 70% of all our wheat is dried and killed in the field with glyphosate. Once again, the best possible place to put it is in an organic mix that can be potentially degraded and ameliorated with bacterial activity. So putting it in compost is the best. It's everywhere. And some people would say it's intentional that they destroy a clean baseline anywhere in the United States. But Kansas and Missouri are ground zero for glyphosate application.
So you do not test for glyphosate?
No.
Okay. All right. Those are our questions that I have listed here. Megan Matthews says, thank you for the detailed answer. Are there any other questions? Please raise your hand, and let me take it off of everybody off spotlight here. And if anybody would like to raise their hand if they have a question.
Well, I'll chime in, Stan. If let's say there's a city in the Midwest that wants to move along the path that you have started and maintained in Missouri, what type of technical assistance arrangements can you make? And are they, I guess this is a question to Sean also, are these technical assistance from city to city, are they fundable under some of the USDA programs that you mentioned?
I would say certainly fundable. We're very familiar with smaller towns and cities working with yard waste collection and food waste collection. And the key is critical mass. What we've proposed with some of these people we're working with is rotating grinders, rotating screeners, where 5 metros go together and put together a funding base to where they can actually buy enough equipment and share it, because they don't need it all the time. That you can, most of these things are trailerable, and that's the technical assistance. I mean, obviously I personally would be glad to network with any of the smaller towns that are reasonable, but distance. But sure, that's the kind of thing.
Yeah. Sean, please. Yeah,
I'll chime in on it too. I'd say certainly fundable, and the one thing that I would emphasize is that you don't have to do it all. You can certainly target some food waste. Just getting some out of the landfill is a huge benefit, and that also acts as a proof of concept for the area. A lot of the projects that we fund have just garnered interest from surrounding counties, surrounding cities. They hear about it, they want to see it, they see that it's viable, and then they get interest too. And that can have just a huge impact in terms of just spreading the word. And also, piggyback on Stan's comment too, get multiple areas together. Try to aggregate some stuff. I believe here in Northern Virginia we have Prince William County, who's done a tremendous public-private partnership, has a huge amount of capacity, and counties from all over, send their food waste to that facility. So there certainly is a lot of capacity for regional integration, and ideally, that's what we want to see.
Great. I see that Rick Anthony has his hand up. Rick, please.
I do. A great presentation, Sean and Stan and Gary. I really learned a lot. A couple issues that I have with what you're doing, and I know it's the time and place. Where are you getting the biochar from? Is that from the brush that's coming in? And
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
why do you take anything to an incinerator then? If you're only doing organics and you're making biochar, why would you take anything to a waste energy plant? I'm just curious.
What we get out of the packager, of the depackager, is slimy, wet cardboard and plastic. And we have to mix that with wood. And when we do go to a waste to energy, it's a cement plant. And our fuel is called refuse derived fuel. It's displacing coal. And it's a waste that exists. There's not much we can do with it. It's not recyclable. It's contaminated completely. And I understand ideally we wouldn't take anything anywhere. But the idea is that we get paid to take it to the incinerator as a refuse derived fuel. And it is offsetting the emissions of coal.
I understand what you're doing. Zero waste is no burning or discharges to air, water, or land that threaten human health and the environment. And so I'm just curious, is there any other way to handle this packaged stuff rather than to have a depackager? Is actually taking it apart just too labor intensive? And is it possible to ask these guys to package these things differently? Maybe if it was all paper, would it be better then you could just compost it straight out? It's just, to me, it's a real enigma. I've heard the presentations on the squeezer, but I gotta believe that there's another way to do this.
I completely agree. And the point is that we need producer responsibility. And if, in Europe, when you are tired of a car, you take it back to the manufacturer, and every piece of plastic has its own barcode. Yeah. And they disassemble that car and put every piece of plastic in a unique feedstock pile. And if you could do that for food waste, take your trash back to the grocery store, make them take it back, because they've made it. They're making money on putting it in the environment. And they made it so that it's not recyclable in any way. So I'd love to see, I'm not sure politically those things are possible at this stage, but that's where it needs to go, frankly.
Yeah. Stan, just to comment on that, we do believe that the corporation should be responsible, and in some cases taking back the material makes sense, but in other cases charging them for the cost on the public for either recycling or final disposal.
Yes.
And I do have a technical question that Rick pointed out. You mentioned that you get a lot of slimy corrugated. Isn't corrugated compostable?
Yes.
So in theory, you could incorporate that into your composting.
Correct, except that it's completely commingled with wet plastic.
Oh, I see. That's what makes it, yeah.
The guy who does that doesn't last long on that job, believe me.
Well, that's why I say a redesign on the package that takes the plastic out and uses paper as the would be more acceptable to this way of handling organics.
And setting up reuse systems, reusable containers, not single-use plastics.
Right. Cardboard mycelium packaging that's totally compostable.
Yes.
All of that's out there.
Right.
And are we still in the baby steps of this process? Yes, but it's important, Rick, to look forward to the ways we can move better. And thank you for that.
Well, one other general comment about all of this composting activity, and I emphasize it a lot in my work in cities that are either trying to keep an incinerator from being built or actually closing an existing incinerator. And that is that as you start composting, you change the quantity and quality of the waste stream so that if you shut down your incinerator, you're not going to be you shut down your incinerator in combination of starting your pathway to zero waste, and in doing that, you just change the whole nature of the waste stream. And I want to point out that in several of the anti-incineration battles that I'm involved in, and Gary Liss works with me, and Rick Anthony works with me on these things. What we're finding is that getting management under control of the organics, which could be 35 to 40% of the waste stream, is the first major step in starving that incinerator and ultimately shutting down, as grassroots people and small businesses are trying to do across the country. So composting is a critical component of zero waste. And I want to mention one other comment, because Stan has made thousands of small performances and presentations. And I want to recall the lesson we learned from our friend Rossano Ecrolini from Italy, who's a great zero waste campaigner. And that is that the pathway to zero waste is paved with small meetings, many small meetings. And I think all of the presenters have been involved in many small meetings. And Stan, you add your singing, which makes the meetings even more fun.
I'll drink to that.
Great, good. We're at time, but there's no one shutting us down. So if there are more questions or more comments that people want to make, please feel free. I don't see anything else in the chat.
We asked people to raise their hands if they had any extra questions.
Absolutely.
Just raise their hand. And it seems we have already answered all the questions. Stan?
Putting food in the trash contaminates all the recyclables and turns them into trash.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
And this is,
oh,
you know, if a piece of trash was completely clean of wet food waste, everything would be recyclable, and you'd be able to get it to a MRF and take it completely apart and do a great job with it. I mean,
so do you not support a required sorting that in every municipality in the world, people would sort into a technical category and an organic category, and maybe, in my mind, a durable goods? Are you looking towards that kind of mandate, or you still think we should be voluntarily participating?
We're lucky to have this program in Missouri. You know, Kansas City is a pale purple dot in a sea of red.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
The point that, you know, as I say, we have built this over 30 years by doing the possible. And you're right, Rick. We need all of that. But I have a bumper sticker. It says, "How big is your we?" And we have a whole bunch of people who do not believe there's another person on the planet except themselves. Unfortunately, we have to disapprove them of that idea gently and bring them around to the idea that we're all in this together.
Yeah. Well, Rick reminds me that, all the presentations remind me that the basic economic principle of solid waste management is, if you keep it separate, it's cheaper and you have raw materials. If you mix everything together, you've got to pay to landfill to incinerate. So the message that I've learned, as I said before, Rick Anthony was and is my mentor. Keep it separate, stupid. And then you can proceed to a very cost-effective and environmentally sound approach to managing the materials that wind up in our waste stream.
You know, you got to understand what we're talking about is 50 years ago in 1970, and where prior to the Clean Air Act, which was 68, everything was burned in open pits in the cities, in the open dumps. And as we entered this field, all of a sudden the rulemaking is starting to happen. And what are we going to do with all this stuff? And Gene Vincent from actually San Diego, but Fresno was the guy in the military, the Seabees, where they couldn't have a burning dump out in the field when they're engaged in World War. They had to cover it so there wouldn't be any flies. And so the concept of a sanitary landfill. I say all this because what we're learning now, 50 years later, is one of the more stupid ideas we've ever done, by mixing materials and then creating liquid slurries that end up in our groundwater, and then a methane that comes out of, I mean, I operated landfills for 20 years for Fresno and San Diego, and most of my time was spending mitigating the pollution from these generators. So as an old man, what I'm saying now is no landfills, no incinerations, redesign it. If in our city where we have yard and food together, and we have a technical pickup, and we have places to take our durable goods, my trash bin is what? The plastic bags that I don't want to take back to the grocery stores. That's about, and bag dog poop. So, you know, I'm really saying, Stan and Sean, that the time now, it's not to hesitate. We got an open window. Fund these suckers, make them mandatory. Say, you know, I'll give you $2 million, but it's got to be required in your city that you make the separation with enforcement. And if you do that, you're going to have some really great programs and really great reductions. And you'll show global, in the terms of global warming, you'll show that there'll be a greenhouse gas depletion because there won't be methane coming from the landfills. Sorry, I got my chance. Thank you.
I'll just pick up on what Rick just said with the challenge to Sean to translate what he said. Having in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or RFA, saying that you be looking for evaluating performance of residential compost collection systems that provide incentives, policy support, like mandates, or other creative ideas to maximize participation, minimize contamination, and that you're looking for in new ways of approaching that. I'm working with Jeremy Drake in Medford, Massachusetts, where the community came up with the idea of going to every other week trash as a key incentive for getting organics out of the municipal waste stream, complemented by weekly food waste composting services. And so instead of a mandate to get the organics separated from the technical nutrients, as Rick was alluding, it's using the potential of every other week trash service being implemented in 3 to 4 years from the beginning of that program starting. You will be able to advertise that get your food waste out now, so that you'll see that you won't need to have weekly trash collection anymore. And so what I'm talking about is that there could be innovations like that. It could be mandates, it could be economic incentives, unit pricing, and pay as you throw as examples of that, but having specific suggestions of things you're looking for in your RFA and allowing for innovations to maximize participation, minimize contamination, like Stan talked about that 1% to 2% in Minneapolis. Fabulous idea, Stan, where they're charging everyone for the service, but only those who request the bins get it. You know, that's another model. So getting all these types of models funded as pilot programs to seed and then compare the results from different approaches could be really an innovative outcome of this webinar.
Yeah, please go ahead, Stan.
We collect food waste from the local minor league sports stadium. Yep. Sporting KC. They're proposing something new called Smart Sort. It's AI. They know the face of every person in the stands because they take their picture when they come to they walk up to the kiosk, and the AI recognizes that they have a plastic bottle and a composting, a paper food waste container. So the plastic bottle lights up and tells them where to put it.
Wow.
And the food waste container lights up and does this. They know who these people are. If they do it right, they get credit towards extra free tickets. It's called gamification. The staff doesn't have to go rolling around the whole stadium. They can only go to the one that's full.
Hey, I'm a baseball fan and I'm all for it. I love that.
And you're right at recyclers, and you get a whole bunch of hot dogs out of the deal, right? I've been to a baseball game with Neil. He has a routine.
It's expensive, but it could train the general public in a good way. And
interesting.
I like
scares the
that.
hell out of me. I'm too old for this stuff, but it's the future for sure.
Yeah, there's so much innovation. I'm working in Dutchess County and Westchester County, and the one woman, Anna Giordano, is just an expert at dealing with food in schools. And among other things, she was telling us at a recent webinar that once you prepare food in school to distribute to the kids, if it's left over, you have to throw it out. So among other innovative tactics, they started handing out, or young people, kids, students are bringing in plastic bags because they can take that excess food home for an afternoon snack or an evening meal. And she was describing the horror of seeing a whole tray of lasagna being dumped out, and it really is frightening when you see that gross waste. So all of this is to say that we are in the middle of a composting revolution, and it was quite wonderful, Stan, to hear what you're doing and to hear from Gary and Sean about how communities and businesses could get funded to expand composting. Sean, did you want to have any last comments that you want to make?
Well, just to address kind of what Gary brought up, you know, I am but a humble bureaucrat. I can't say much, but in a personal capacity, yes, I like what we're hearing, and I think you know, our projects have really been used as a proof of concept, and you know, what's been said before is that, you know, if you're going to implement policy changes, you need to know where and what it's going to be, where and what it's going to go. And so having these avenues is definitely a first step to creating those policy changes. And it is good to see that so many people are thinking about it, and very happy that Zero Waste is such a good partner in it.
Thank you.
Chris, unless there are more questions, I think we could sign off. A very helpful webinar. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening. Chris, any final words?
Yes, I'd like to thank everybody for participating today. Thanks for all the people who came as attendees. Thank you, everyone. This is a project of COOLNow, Compostable Organics Out of Landfills Now, and it is a Zero Waste USA program. So if you want to learn more about that, there's more information, obviously, in all of the literature that we've sent you via email. So please check it out. We're growing, and we want to have an impact on how we divert organics out of landfills. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.